really recently, my sobriety date is November 12th, 2007. It's the only one I have. There's no wood, knock wood. And I, it's so strange. Only recently, in the last 4 months, have I been introducing myself as Hiroshi in English-speaking Alcoholics Anonymous. And the way that I started naming myself Hiro was when I was in nursery school, and I realized that I was different, and I didn't want to be different, and I didn't want to be Japanese, and I changed my name to Hiro, which didn't make me less Japanese, but made it maybe a little easier to pronounce. And I don't know if you have any self-hatred on board, and then maybe if you stay sober, take these steps, do some general service, have a sponsor, have commitments and meetings, sponsor other people. Maybe you too in 17 years can get rid of self-hatred enough to change your name to what you were named, or to the name that feels like your actual name. Hiroshi really feels like my name. But I also love it when people call me Hiro because, well, it's Hiro. Come on. So. I told you my sobriety date. It's so what's crazy about that is my first home group that I walked into on like 2 days before my sobriety date. They had it's this little first step hall in Long Beach called the Round Table, and they do this really weird thing. Like every time anyone steps up to the podium, and most of the meetings are participation meetings, except for one book study, and anytime anyone steps up to the podium, they say their time backwards, which is really odd. And so my time backwards is I haven't had a drink or a drug or anything that affects me from the neck up for 12 days, 3 months, and 17 years, one at a time. And I asked my sponsor, my first sponsor, Wild Bill, who's hosting birthday night, like right now. I asked him, why do people do arithmetic from the podium? And he says, well, I don't know about everybody else, but I say my time backwards because for me, days are more important than years. And as soon as years become more important than days, that's when I've lost my years. And I knew what he was talking about because he had come through AA multiple times. I love him. My home group is the Bellflower Big Book Group. We meet on Monday nights. If you're ever in Southern California, please, I'll give you my number. And if you'd let me give me a couple of weeks lead time, I'll change my schedule and we'll meet up beforehand and get there. When the setup folks get there, you get to greet people, and then we'll go grab some dinner and then come back. And then there's a little beginners meeting from 6:15 to 6:45 where someone shares on the first 90 days. There's an basket that goes around. And our group is like this group. It's known around town as kind of a pathologically rule following group. Like it's very quiet. People are sitting, attentive. Everything's soft. No phones ringing generally. And then after that's done, we like pray out, and then we get into 3 lines because there's on the 2 sides and then the very center aisle. And what we're doing is we're going to thank the speaker, just like many of you might thank me. And I used to not. About 10 years into my sobriety is when I stopped cringing when people said thank you. And here's the secret. Tradition 12 talks all about humility, and one of the things about the principle of humility is that my realization that all the wonderful things in my life exist because of strong sponsorship, a strong home group, being in the book with sponsees all the time, and reaching out my hand when anyone needs help. And knowing that I'm responsible for that today. And what that means is everything good in my life is because of God. And that means when you thank me, I won't be cringing. I'll be like breathing into my heart center and saying, thank you for your thanks, because I know the truth. You're thanking God and not me. I'm a good vessel today because I'm higher powered, and I'm AA powered, and I'm sponsor powered, and sponsee powered, and home group powered. But on my own power, I'm self-aggrandizing because you scare me. And I just want to fit in. Since the last time I came, last March, I changed sponsors. I was sponsored by Bob D in Vegas, and last March, I felt called to be sponsored in my own home group, and I asked Johnny H to sponsor me. And there's something really miraculous about being a whiny baby man on my own power, with like really low pain tolerance and really high entitlement. and it's there's something really magic about making my daily call and whining to a 94-year-old, 63 years sober, about my day, because I don't know, he always sets me straight, like within like 8 words or less, and it's really lovely. And he's the hero whisperer. I can really hear him. I'm supposed to tell you in a general way what I used to be like, what happened, and what I'm like today. And first, I should thank everybody. I should thank Luke for coordinating with the Second Tradition folk and asking me to come and speak, and Rafe for coming to pick me up, and also, oh my goodness, Chris and Mick for like driving from here down to pick me up in Oakland and then drive me to San Jose last night, and that was just truly rad. I love watching AA happen. And the only way I'm not like horribly uncomfortable about like receiving help that way is because I do the same thing for folks that come down. So please come visit. There's a lot of folks that are new. There's a lot of folks that are new, and what's odd about Alcoholics Anonymous, like I came in without rehab, without detox, without hospitalization. I've never been hospitalized against my will. I've never been, even though I've been psychotic, and I've never had a DUI, even though I've driven drunk and intoxicated many a time. I've never lost a job because of alcohol, but I found out in my fifth step that I lost many because of alcoholism, and that I think the one thing that might make me unusual in terms of coming into AA, not from rehab, is that I'm not confused. I'm not confused about the difference between spiritual language and cognitive psychology language or medical language. And one of the things that we get to do in Alcoholics Anonymous is translate clinical language into spiritual language, which is amazing. And I love that. So for those of you who are new, I avoided coming into Alcoholics Anonymous for the longest time, and I avoided coming in here mostly because I didn't consider myself an alcoholic, and I didn't consider myself an alcoholic because I really love alcohol, and it tended to work better more than it worked badly, except for when it worked badly more than it worked better, and then I would stop for a while, and I was always good at stopping until I finally wasn't at the very end, and the thing about stopping, I hate stopping. I don't like change. I was talking to Mick and Chris last night about I hate change. I don't like changing. I don't even like traveling. I didn't like coming here. I love being here. I love having gotten here. I don't want to fly tomorrow, but I will love being home. But once I'm on the plane, I'm fine on the plane. But getting rid of the plane, I don't like getting rid of the plane. I don't like change unless it's already happened the way I want it to. Or if it happens without my noticing. And that's one of the reasons why alcohol is wonderful until it's not. So if you're new to Alcoholics Anonymous, like I came in with, because I'm basically overeducated beyond my usefulness on my own power. And so I came in with a lot of pride in terms of what's provable, what's researchable. And I had a lot of assumptions about God. And there's so much God's in the steps, God's in the concepts, God's in the traditions, God. And this was off-putting until I had no other option than to come in here and hear about God. And it was really annoying because if you have difficulty with God, there's the whole come to believe step, and it's a later step. It's advanced Alcoholics Anonymous. You'll need a sponsor first, but the thing about it, though, is you don't have to come to believe in God if you're in step one. You just have to be in step one. And part of step one is exactly what Bill talks about in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. You get to come to believe in the hopelessness and the futility of life as you've been living it. And I think one of the reasons why I'm still in Alcoholics Anonymous is I'll start running my life on my own will, and I'll start taking many things for granted in my life, in my marriage, in my AA family, and then I'll start getting really, really uncomfortable. And I love having a low pain tolerance today because what'll happen over and over is I'll come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of my life as I've been living it sober. And I hate realizing that the way I'm living is futile. I love having had realized it. And because having had realized it, I've already started to change. In fact, if you're here and you're new, or you've had time and you're feeling despair or hopelessness or discomfort or depression, like you'll know if you're depressed if you're like me. Like I'm really good at thinking that I suck and all of you suck and the world sucks and we're all gonna suck forever. I'm good at believing this, and if you experience that, and you're also somebody where once you start drinking, it stops solving your other problems and it starts causing more problems than it solves, which is my experience. And I make excuses for all those other problems because I think, oh, those are because of life or the wrong recipe or eating too little or too much spicy food or what have you before drinking. The beautiful thing is you'll get to perform your own experiment. And what I did, the reason it took me 30 years, my first drink at age 12 to age 42 to come into Alcoholics Anonymous, is I kept performing the experiment of maybe it'll work this time. Maybe this will, and I had to basically come to the conclusion, no, there is no hope in my best friend, alcohol. There is no more hope in his little buddies. So what you'll get to do, like if you felt the despair of not being able to drink right and not being able to stop and stay stopped from drinking, welcome. And you could perform the experiment of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you decide to perform the experiment of Alcoholics Anonymous, if you're in enough despair like I was when I came in, I went and asked somebody to sponsor me at day -2. And there's something about hopelessness. Hopelessness outside of here is a cardinal symptom of major depressive disorder. Inside Alcoholics Anonymous, it's a prerequisite for a spiritual experience. It's a prerequisite for having a better life. It's a prerequisite for being able to walk up to some stranger and go, "Hi, my name is Hiro. I'm an alcoholic. Will you be my sponsor?" And then they'll ask you like a question that seems really sort of extreme. Are you willing to go to any lengths to stay sober? And if you're desperate like I was, you say yes, not knowing what you're promising, and they will remind you. And I think the first step, my experience of my childhood is filtered through my life today, and it's filtered through my understanding of the steps. And I had a lot of the language. I didn't have this language then. I have a lot of unmanageability today, but also as a kid. What that means is that I'm really good at feeling restless. Like my life was like this, even before I found caffeine, like in classrooms, and I'm irritable. Like if I don't get what I want right away, or if I'm not able to stay away from the stuff I don't want right away, then I get easily angered. Even as a little kid, I would throw little temper tantrums, and I still throw like baby temper tantrums at the age of 59, and which is so attractive for my wife. And I'm discontented. And that means I'll get exactly what I want. I remember back in once my father finally got done with his 2 postdocs, and he finally landed a job, and he saved a little bit of money. I remember once after we got into a real house, and I saw on TV when at a friend's house, because my parents didn't let me watch like Saturday morning cartoons, there's a commercial about the G.I. Joe Jungle headquarters. And at the time, I would have told you emphatically, G.I. Joe is not a doll, it's an action figure. Today, I know it's a doll. So, but I wanted the G.I. Joe with action grip and the jungle headquarters. And it cost a lot of money at the time. And we were living on my dad's graduate student and postdoc salary for a long time. And it was a big ask. And they saved money, and they saved money, and they saved money. And I saw this giant box under the tree. And I was like, oh, that's it. I knew it. I knew that it was it. And I waited. And it's finally Christmas, and I open it up, and it's the jungle headquarters. And I play with that G.I. Joe for 4 hours, and I'm bored, and stayed in the garage after that, because I'm done. I got to play with it, and now I'm done. And if only I'd saved it in the original condition in the box, it would be worth so much today. But I didn't. So I get exactly what I want, and the shine wears off so quickly. I get so bored, and boredom and hero don't mix well. And I have all these other feeling bad skills that are also detailed on page 52. Trouble with personal relationships. I had trouble fitting in with kids. I had trouble fitting in with teachers. They knew that I was gifted and smart, but I would also blurt out answers. That's really annoying for teachers because I'm very undisciplined, and they always tried to discipline me, which I always found ways of outsmarting. And I thought I was outsmarting, but they were just found other ways to discipline me by talking to my parents, and they found ways to discipline me. And so I didn't like that either. So I would squirm around and find other ways of just getting out of my skin, because on my own power, I don't like where I am. On my own power, I don't like who I am. On my own power, I don't like how I feel, how I look. If you call me and get my number and call me, I have a photo of me before I have adult teeth. And it's got the bowl haircut that I hated, and I have no bridge to my nose, and other kids call me flat face. But now I love this picture because I'm able to look back and go, oh my God, you were such an alcoholic. Oh my God, just like to that kid, just wait like another 8 years, and you're going to discover alcohol, and it will solve all of your problems until it creates more, right? And man, and full of fear. I was so full of fear as a kid, afraid of misery and depression. Like, oh, I don't like the worst thing is being asked to do something tedious that you already understand that is for other kids. The first time I ended up like not doing a piece of homework because it was stupid. That was a major part of my grade, was a coloring assignment in fifth grade. I was just so full of contempt as a fifth grader. Like, oh, coloring. On a unit on Mexico. I mean, come on, seriously. I took all of these. I love the color. I love it. But if you require it of me, I hate it. So I bury it underneath like all this other scratch paper and in my drawer that I can, and I'll bring it out later when I feel like coloring. And my mom finds it and then tells Mr. Black, and it was the first F I got on something. And there was so much shame in our household. And I was made in Japan, so I'm really, really good at shame. And unfortunately, I've been thanks to Alcoholics Anonymous, before my parents died, I was able to behave like the firstborn son that they were trying to raise. I was able to accomplish the things that made them really proud of having a son like me, and really kind of that language of rubbing out a record of just so much harm and so much anger as a teenager. Because for me, I identify with my friend Charlie C. from Pacific Group. I'm like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Rogers. If I'm drinking, I'm happy, I'm convivial. If I can't get to it, I'm really irritated. And so I discover alcohol at age 12, and oh, so lovely. I remember just by following a few simple directions from my friend Dave, who is already like 6'4", and I hadn't hit puberty yet. And he had like that almond brother hair part in the middle, like down to his butt, and those like piercing blue wizard eyes. And we're hanging out after school in the science fiction book club, because that's how cool I am in 1977. That's how I roll. And this is before even Star Wars, that the young people know as Episode 4 comes out. And he's all diagnosing me after we read, I don't know, I think it was a Heinlein book or something. And he says, you seem anxious all the time. I'm like, oh, that's it. I'm anxious. That's the word. And you know that thing that where like if you have the word for exactly, oh yeah, alcoholic. Oh, so but where you get the word that describes everything that's going on for you, and then you're like, oh, that's the word for that. Oh, there's unmanageability. That's the word for that. Spirituality. Oh, because that's untreated about alcoholism. Okay, got it. And so for me, he said anxious, and I was just like, oh, there's a label that fits. Okay, there's something that describes this horrible amalgam of how I feel. And he invited me to join him before campus on the other side of the bamboo field, and he showed me how to drink, and he showed me how to drink some tall boys and smoke some funny green cigarettes real slow. And I was a kid where I like, my idea of a good time was either sneaking out on Friday with my little Spock ears to go to the Star Trek convention, or to memorize pi for another 10 digits. And so I'm like, wow, you follow a few simple directions, and you can get relief from self really quickly. And I just fell in love with it, and I became an evangelist for King Alcohol and his little buddies. Really quickly, like I descended very quickly, and by the age of 16, just needed to die. I had a handful of Valium and a handful of Librium and a bottle of Bacardi 151, and I took it as a concerted effort to die. I knew that if this crossed my blood-brain barrier, I would go off gently into that good night. But I forgot I was a puker, because I'm like half the Japanese population. I have that Asian flush. And in fact, I was hanging out with some colleagues, much younger than me. They were all like moms in their 30s. And one of them is, an Asian American professional. And she was saying, I have the Asian flush. I get bright red when I have a little bit of alcohol and I get all itchy. And I open my big mouth and I'm, oh, you can drink through that. And yeah, they're just an antihistamine. And so they didn't really understand, but that's okay. And my parents were good, loving, non-alcoholic, hardworking immigrant people, both with higher education. And I'm the firstborn son. I just felt the burden of being the firstborn son. I didn't realize it was legacy. But I felt like it was a burden. And I also didn't know this thing where I now know today, like going through this process of inventory and amends, and I now know that maybe intergenerationally and especially interculturally, especially if for like parents that are more traditional and kids that are raised here, or even just with a generational gap, that I think that there are these invisible subtitles between what parents say and their kids understand. And I think back to like when we moved to California in third grade, and my buddy Jay, he gets like 2 B's and 3 A's, and he gets $1 for each of his A's, like early 70s A's, right? And so dollars rather, not A's. And my parents, I get 1 B and 4 A's, and they're like, "What happened here? What happened with the B?" And I have no idea that there are these subtitles, and what they're saying is, Hiroshiko, you've already far exceeded us linguistically. You've already gone much farther than us. You can pronounce the difference between R's and L's, TH's and S's, and you've got all the articles like the and a and all the pronouns. Pronouns are again confusing, but it's just practice, so I know. And they're saying in here, we're the way that we know that you can succeed in this country where you look different and where your parents sound different is education. Education is how you're going to succeed, and we're going to be on you. We're going to push you to be better because we know you can be better, because that's how we were made better. And it's because we love you, and it's because we're proud of you. Is the subtitles. All I hear is, "I'm wrong again. I'm wrong again. I'm never good enough again." And today, it's today, as a result of taking all 12 steps and making amends with my parents and building a relationship with them, that I know exactly what they had in me. And because my parents succeeded at the role of parenthood. All parents basically want to give their kids a better life than them, and not to struggle as much as they did. And if you succeed, if you have kids and you've succeeded, you might have ended up with a teenager like me, where that they're completely entitled, have no sense of gratitude or sense of curiosity about how much you sacrificed for them. And that was me. And so what am I doing at age 16? I'm trying to commit suicide, but because I was a puker, there was a cleanup in my room, and thank God I didn't pass out on my side. So really quickly, fast forward through failures and successes, graduate from high school, graduate from a major university in LA in 7 years instead of 4, drop out of 2 PhD programs in English literature, meet my wife in the second one back in LA, I end up, here's the thing, when I stop and I stay stopped, I'm good. And I remember when my first sponsor just asked me what happens when you're drinking? I'm like, it's a crapshoot. Like I don't know. And he says, "Oh, so you don't know when you'll lose control?" And I said, "Yeah." So he said, "So in other words, you can't control when you lose control?" I said, "That's right." And I would hear people talk about they take a drink and it all goes to crap. And that's not my experience. My experience is I take a drink and it often goes well. I often just get that little sweet spot and I could just cruise right through, add a little more, cruise right through, add a little bit more, cruise right through. That happens often until it happens less often. And that happens predictably until it becomes far more unpredictable. And what happens is that at the tail end, I finally get it. Like my willpower is amazing. But the second question that my sponsor asked me is, can you stop and stay stopped? I said, yeah, that happens all the time. I stop and stay stopped until I don't. He said, no, staying stopped means forever. No, I've never been able to do that. And he asked me why. And right before my last drink, I had just done that thing with some professional help of getting off of everything, all the stuff I was using to try and sleep, all the stuff I was using to wake up, all the stuff I was trying to relax, and all the alcohol. And I stopped everything, and which helped with the psychosis. And I come back to the hospital in which I worked, and I knew all I had to do was not drink or use. That's all I had to do. And someone invites me to a wine tasting, and of course I go, because it's just like Fred and more about alcoholism. The fourth case study in chapter 3, where there's not a cloud in the sky. I know that all I have to do is not drink or use in order to succeed at this pre-doctoral internship and finally finish this my dissertation, which is a really long paper. And but of course I forget. I'm like, it's civilized. And it works perfectly for a couple of weeks until it goes really quickly downhill. And my wife confronts me with those dead glass taxidermy eyes a little over a month later. And she it's like she's part owl, blink, blink, terror, blink, blink, contempt, and blink, blink, disgust. And who are you? What have you done with my husband? And I'm scared. I have this moment of clarity. I realize I'm going to lose this, and unless something can happen, I'm not going to be able to finish this degree or these hours. I'm not going to. I've got nothing left. Suicide is an option once again, and so I make an SOS phone call, and I don't call any of you. I knew so many alcoholics who were happy, joyous, and free. I call my friend Mary. It's 9:30 p.m. on a Friday night. She picks up the third ring. She says, Hiro, what's going on? And I'm on the phone like crazy and manic going, Mary, I don't trust my drink. I think you can just drink. I get bipolar. I need to live you. And she's never heard me in this terrified manic state. So she says, Hiro, what's going on? And I tell her everything. And all the crap I'm pouring into my body, all the skeezing, acting out I'm doing just to try to get okay. I can't get to okay. My body gets drunk. My head won't shut off. My head's still telling me, Hiro, you suck more than anyone's ever sucked before. Death is an option. Maybe you can actually drink right. And all of this whole thing. And it's horrible. And at the end of that, she says, Hiro, I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been sober for 22 years. Maybe you need a meeting. And this thing happens I describe as physiological. It's like there's a branch 2 inches below my belly button. It just goes, and I just start sobbing, yucca, yucca, snot pouring out the nose, ugly cry, involuntary stomach crunches. And because I know about AA, I know that one day at a time means forever, and that's terrifying. But I'm also bewildered because she's the one who taught me how to send you to AA. She's the one who taught me to tell you things like, you might not drink right. You might need this place called Alcoholics Anonymous. They know how to stay sober there. I can't help you with that. She told me to tell you, if you go to AA, go there to identify, not compare. Go there to listen for similarities, not differences. She told me to tell you, if you hear about God, which you might a lot, you don't believe in God or have trouble with God, don't worry about that. That's advanced Alcoholics Anonymous. That's a later step. And I was helped along, like I told you, I came into my first home group the next day, and I was helped along so much by people with time. Like, I would open my mouth and people would start telling me things about me. They'll start telling me things like, oh, you seem smart. That helps out there. It'll kill you in here. Or people saying, you might be too smart to stay sober. You might be too smart to be available for happiness. It's something that one of the home group members, Ray Melbaum, that's what the old timers told him, and that's what he told me. And I thought this was some new form of like AA hazing, except it felt so accurate. And so I knew that I had to dumb down. And my sponsor had me starting to pray right away. And And if you're new and you're asked to pray and you have a sponsor and you want to do what they say, but you're aversive to prayer, just do what I did. I just used the role of substitution. For me, at the very minimum, all prayer is setting my intention. Like setting intention setting is powerful. Like if I want to get a drink, I'm going to go get that drink. If like when my willpower is active and it's aligned with chance and it's aligned with, but now it's going to be aligned with basically spiritual power, the power that in step two in the traditions, step two in the 12 and 12, it talks about the method of substitution. Like maybe God could be a group of drunks, it could be the AA group. It's a power that's here, and so I'm setting my intention to turn my attention to something that's other than me, something more powerful than me. And in the one book that's mentioned in the first 164 pages, is a book by William James called Varieties of Religious Experience. And Varieties of Religious Experience is the transcripts of a series of talks that William James, an American psychologist, gave in the UK. And when he right before he published them, he wrote a postscript to all of them. And in the postscript, if you pick up the book, you just go to the second to last page. And in there, he says this really curious thing. He says, in all these talks, I might have made it seem like this power has to be omnipresent, omnipowerful. It has to be even just like one power, like one God. And he says that's actually not true. It can actually there's just a few simple requirements about this power. It has to be not me. It has to be friendly to me. It has to be connected to me, and it has to be far more powerful than me. And he says this really curious thing. He says, it could be a future, wiser you. And I'm a science fiction guy. I mean, this is like time travel, science fiction, other world, like the two roads conversion, and I went this way with Alcoholics Anonymous, and every time the roads branch, I go this way with Alcoholics Anonymous, and the roads branch, and I go this way with Alcoholics Anonymous, and as a result of that, as a result of doing like the substitution prayer, the substitution God, I get to have the correlation God, and what the correlation God is that maybe Alcoholics Anonymous is like you hear about the word fellowship, and fellowship like would annoy me. It would just annoy me intellectually. I'm like, fellowship, that's either church or it's really delightful. It's like hobbits, but I don't know how like cosplay is going to help me, but it's fun. But I don't know how it helped with my alcoholism. And I learned that the fellowship, all of fellowship is a group of people who have the same problem, and they've decided to join together on the same solution, and that they vowed to take care of each other, be responsible for each other, to nurture each other, to love each other. And that's something that I can get behind. And it's almost, I think about, like, I'm not a big team sports watcher. I love it when people explain it to me because it's so helpful. But I think about like these teams that are full of like huge egos. And what do? They get together and they practice and they practice and they practice and they practice. And sometimes what will happen is beautiful, poetic, impossible things in these teams. And for us in Alcoholics Anonymous, these beautiful, impossible things aren't just once a season. They're daily. They're daily. Like the impossible becomes possible on a daily basis in Alcoholics Anonymous. I think about two things. When I spoke at Second Tradition yesterday, I was going through the book, and I found a talk by my seatmate, Ann W., in my home group. And it was a talk of hers from 2000. And the first thing she says at the Second Tradition in San Jose, the first thing she says is, I don't like women. She gets her like sobriety date and her sponsorship and home group, Bellflower group, just like me. And she says, I don't like women. But the one person that I do like is right here in the audience and who befriended me. And her name is Debbie H. But then there's a man in here who she's fallen in love with, and it is taking her away from me. And I'm like, oh my God, that's Debbie. And she's on my board of directors, And so is Debbie, I mean, I haven't consulted Debbie in a long time, but she's on there. She tells me to do something, I'll do it. And all these folks with long time sober have been on my board of directors, whether they know it or not. And I was having this experience where, and she says in there, she starts talking about her dad to start out with. So let me tell you about my dad. My mom was worried when he retired that he was alcoholic also. And by this point, I'm sober. My dad was just a heavy drinker. He got cancer the first time, and he, as a scientist, he says, well, cancer loves to, grows. It feeds on sugar. Alcohol metabolizes the sugar. I'm stopping. Like with a good reason, he stopped and he stays stopped. My mom's father, she was the only child, and my mom's father was like the Cesar Chavez of southern Japan. Like I have a photo of him with a hachimaki, a headband of determination, about to march like 50,000 farmers to the capital so that they can have rights over the land, get like a living wage, and. He, in his 40s, because in Japan, corporate over drinking is a requirement. And he just like says, no, I've stopped. And there's all these family stories of like people would offer him drinks because it's polite, offer him drinks. And he like yelled at his people, like, just, I told you I don't want any more. Don't ask me again. And like everyone's like, oh, but I'm not like that guy. I decide to stop and I start again. But there's a story from right before I started drinking, and my mom has gone back to Japan to make amends as an only child to her father, and she's at his bedside as he's dying of lung cancer in the hospital that he founded, and she's making amends to him. And she's saying to him, I'm so sorry for taking your firstborn grandson across the water. And not only doing that, when he was in fourth grade, I started taking him to Pomona First Baptist, and he's fallen in love with Jesus. And she was brought up Pure Land Buddhist. Pure Land Buddhist is kind of like Catholicism, like a lot of chanting, a lot of a dead language, in this case, Pali, and a lot of iconography. Thank you. And so she was filled with incredible shame, and she's making this bedside amends to her father. And her father says, there's nothing to make amends for. He says to her, it's like we're both looking at the same moon, and we're walking up different sides of the mountain. It doesn't matter what path he's on. And it's like my grandfather was describing Alcoholics Anonymous. We were looking at the same moon. It doesn't matter if you believe in God. You will probably end up with a sponsor that'll tell you, I don't believe in that God either. I believe in another power called God. And what's crazy is that while she was in Japan is when I had my first drink, and I was leaving the church because I was convinced because people would tell me that God was ashamed of me, and I was accursed because of starting to bud desire and identity and behaviors that I was longing to do. And I'm so grateful to discover that they weren't describing God; they were describing their opinions and experiences of whatever power they had. And what my experience today is that just as Bill talks about, I've had deep and effective spiritual experiences. Being able to be at my father's bedside and be able to talk to him in Japanese, because I was going to the Japanese speaking meeting with my friend Judy Kaduti when I was new every week in Gardena. Being able to be on the phone with my mom and doing exactly what she would do when international calls were too expensive. She would write her mother letters and like 3 a week, and they would send them back and forth. And meanwhile, she would talk to her in the moon. And I would, whenever the moon was big, I would call her up, like leaving Big Book Group. I'd tell her about the moon, and she would go outside and look at the moon. We would talk to each other. We would remember her mother, and so much remembrance. And while there's an overeducated part of me that thinks that some things aren't true and some things are, and has all these prejudices. I've also been taught that I don't have to believe my knowledge. I don't have to believe what I can prove. Actually, I can have my experience, which is here. And my experience here is that, of course, my parents are here. Of course, my late grand sponsor, Clancy, is here. Of course, all the way back, all these folks that I've never met, Chuck C., my Bob's first sponsor, Dick Tucson, all these folks, all the way back to Bill and Bob, all of the ancestral energy that my parents were trying to give me, all right here, and just so happy about that. Here's the thing that I'll return to this idea that I brought up at the very beginning. There's a thing in social science. It's a valid experimental design. Once you come into Alcoholics Anonymous, once you have a spiritual experience, then you're doing AA. And there's something called AB design, and it's a single subject design. You can try doing something else and see how you feel. And if you're lucky and you haven't drank, you can go back to A. Whenever I have sponsees come back and they're like, oh, my life is burning to the ground. At the one point, I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. At the other, I'm like, oh, that's so delightful. Now you can do more Alcoholics Anonymous. That's where you felt hope. That's where you felt alive. That's where you felt reborn. I hope that you, if you're new, that you can stay. If you're struggling in A and you've been here for a while, I hope you can stay again, recommit, become reborn, and join us. Thank you.